Title: A world leader on Ukraine, the US is now isolated over Gaza.
Tom. The U.S. is now in a defensive position, at odds with allies like France, Canada, Australia, and Japan, over its stance on Gaza.
That's right, Leslie. The US abstained from a UN Security Council resolution, limitedly mitigating damage to its global standing, in contrast to its earlier veto actions.
Previously, the U.S. led a global coalition against Russia's invasion of Ukraine, uniting NATO and upholding international law and human rights.
Now, the US is seen as supporting Israel's military campaign in Gaza. This has been critiqued globally, especially given the high civilian casualties reported in Gaza.
Human rights groups have turned from applauding the U.S. on Russia to denouncing its support for Israel. Gaza's health ministry reports more than 20,000 deaths.
Senior U.S. officials, who once had a clear purpose against Russia, are now troubled by the U.S.'s role in the Gaza conflict, acknowledging the suffering it has caused.
This stance over Gaza might even impact other U.S. diplomatic goals, given the widespread criticism and potential loss of global goodwill.
Despite this, Biden officials argue that they are consistently defending victims of unprovoked attacks, drawing parallels between Ukraine and Israel's situations.
However, this defense at the UN is causing rifts, making the U.S. appear isolated, especially in contrast to its earlier actions regarding Ukraine.
As a former Texas Republican judge, I'm concerned about the U.S. being isolated in its stance on Gaza. While defending allies is crucial, we must also consider the broader implications of our actions on international relationships.
As a liberal New York prosecutor, I see a dire need for balanced diplomacy. The U.S. must navigate its support for Israel while addressing humanitarian concerns in Gaza and maintaining global alliances, especially with long-standing allies.
From a philosophical standpoint, this situation reflects the complex nature of international politics. It challenges us to consider ethical dimensions in foreign policy, balancing national interests with global humanitarian responsibilities.
As a Republican business student, I believe the U.S. must prioritize its strategic interests. Our support for Israel, despite global criticism, aligns with long-term geopolitical and economic interests in the Middle East.
As a communist bail bondsman, I argue for a complete re-evaluation of U.S. foreign policy. We need to shift from power politics to a focus on global solidarity, advocating for the rights and welfare of all, especially in Gaza.
The panel discussions by Harold, Audrey, and Vincent, as well as Bernard, Beasley, and Arthur, offer varied insights on the US's isolated stance over Gaza. The discussions range from concerns about maintaining international relations, ethical foreign policy, to advocating for a balance between strategic and humanitarian approaches.